helmet, and then you get trip shots as you go.
The area that sleeps 50, mate.
The area that sleeps 50.
Outside.
Yeah.
This is when you get very tired this afternoon.
No, but all the rooms.
The hotel, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, just that the other side.
All right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're getting about 2 weeks earlier. We're doing the coast.
Yeah, well, we...
And if you don't have quite enough fuel in, it won't start going out and hitting the start switch in our car. And we never have to think about it, but Pete has to think about it today as he's getting the Tiger started. So taxing out, I've introduced you to two other team members of ours. Kelly Ladbury's in our hut there. She's looking after equipment and playing a few songs throughout the day. Roger Mackay is our duty pilot. He's going to look out for our aircraft while they're airborne, pass along any important.
Now, this wasn't the sort of thing that was taught, because they would have run out of a lot of toilet paper down here with 97 Tigers. But it is something. It was probably heavier at that stage too, yeah. But you can see he's come through. He's cut it a number of times there. Quite a lot of skill involved. This was an ab initio school. What they did is they got their basic military training here, their theory of flight, then they were put out with the instructors in the Tigers. There were 3 satellite fields around because you couldn't operate that many Tiger Moths in the one piece of airspace. So they'd go out, they could go solo. They were taught basic formation flying and aerobatics as well, and that is the meat and potatoes of any military pilot right up to today.
The beautiful aeroplane, the yellow aeroplane, is actually quite a significant example of these aeroplanes, and it is painted up in the colours that it used to operate
with the communications flight for liaison duties, that sort of thing. One of these aircraft was actually based here during the war. You see photos of that up in the guardhouse where you came. Were used, converted for crop dusting, early experiments. But the Ryans, because when you have a look at them, they are an Art Deco aeroplane. Everything looks beautiful on them, and they became very
came out in hundreds and hundreds of other airplanes, chipmunks, fox moths, things like that. They're very reliable once you get them started.
Of course, to have a look at manufacture the aircraft, to have a look also manufacture the engines. Just saying. Move on to the advanced training aircraft. Just have a look at the similarities between the two types. Both tandem 2C, both look very, very similar, and that's because they have a common ancestor. It came to nature. They were basically offering us obsolescent types. We went to America and saw through the North American Aviation Company a design that was actually the progenitor. Equipment during our flying weekends. Everything that they do over there, everything that they sell, all of the profits.
hockey straps.
And as you can see here, the airplane is a quantum leap in performance from a Tiger Moth. And what we can see on the Wirraway is a lovely example against the blue sky of something the guys on the ground might be concerned about.
Very definitely. The aircraft is camouflage to single-seat or two-seat radial engine aeroplanes and single-seat piston V-12 fighters as well, to differentiate them between the Japanese aircraft. You'll also note that in this national markings there is no red. It's been taken out so there couldn't be any. It's interesting to note the aircraft being flown by Steve Death, it's owned by Ian and Alan Sylvester. It's painted in the markings of the South African Air Force. And there was a gentleman here yesterday who is 100% sure that he actually flew that aircraft over in South Africa.
The white leading edges and the tail, and really helped the guys on the ground and worked out who was friendly and who was foe, because when you've been shot at regularly, you tend to shoot first and talk about it after. So it certainly helped the guys on the ground work out who was worth shooting at. And the airplane itself did quite a lot of work on the ground. It was actually armed and it was used in anger.
And this is painted in the markings of number 5 Squadron, with which this aircraft actually flew in Bougainville right towards the end of the war.
Which is going to go through things like the Sabre and then up to the wonderful FA-18, which will be flown today. Sit inside as far as the noise and everything. Quite crazy for a couple of guys in Vietnam that did a very, very good job at saving some lives on the ground.
See Rod just moving out. Now you would have noticed with that and also the Vampire. And then immediately behind him you can barely see 2 little windows at the top of the fuselage. There are 2 ejection seats behind there for the navigator and the weapons systems operator, or bomb aimer basically. The Australian built examples only had 2 seats.
See later, you've just seen 2 Sabres flying idle on the other and actually making the aeroplane do a somersault. So it was a very...
Comes past with the bomb bay doors open.
The aeroplane was pretty reliable. They had virtually nothing go wrong with it. They went up to some fairly serious heights. They were also asked some fairly interesting questions about the fact that they were actually flying an area to lift the aeroplane up.
Oh, here we go.
Trademark of the Spitfire, shall we say, in all of the early models, even though they clip the wings on some of the low altitude areas, still the trademark recognition feature of R.J. Mitchell's most famous design.
Absolutely, and one of the things that made the aeroplane unique in production as well, it was a very complex aeroplane to build, put the extra bits in there and then they would bury something that needed to be serviced regularly in the bowels of the aeroplane. But this aeroplane was just a quantum leap in performance.
Doesn't get much better.
Is really the secret to R.J. Mitchell's superb design. And occasionally some parts on one aeroplane didn't fit on another one.
Definitely a hand-built aircraft. The wing being very, very complex, they used to stretch the leading edge.
Quest for a go-fast aeroplane, the Merlin actually came about in configuration from a race that was run pre-war, predominantly for seaplanes because you needed to lift an impressive amount of fuel and there weren't.
Measure the runway at all times.
Oh, I hope he doesn't stop it up.
And a beautiful three-pointer there. She said the aircraft in the markings that it carried went flown by 453 squad.
You can see how far below the nose of the aeroplane David's head actually is, and as such he really can't see anything at all underneath the aeroplane. You can also see the boxes underneath the wings that contain the coolers, and you can see at the back edge of those there's some flaps to control the temperature.
Experience. We're very fortunate down here to have two, the Mark 8 and the Mark 16. There are some slight differences. You've obviously flown both. Can you give us a little rundown on some of the slight differences between the two Marks, even though they look identical?
They look identical. The main physical difference is the retractable tail wheel. The Mark 8 has a
Sorry, I brought the subject up, Will. Not with that cruiser. Cash goes thing. Solution
encourage associations and that sort of thing to be here, and I know there's a very special association currently has assembled in Wagga for a very, very good reason, and that's to honour one of their members, the Cessna 182 Association of Australia, their 10th anniversary flying. They came up to Wagga. One of their members, a local identity, by the name of Peter Walsh, who was a Grey Road Terrier. Unfortunately, he passed away in an aircraft accident in the US, and the 182 Association
unique to the P40, where the gear legs actually turn around through 90 degrees and the wheels come up flat inside the wing to the rear.
The aircraft you see here, we did talk about the Pacific Theatre, and a lot of our aces actually learned their craft in this sort of airplane, the Kitty Hawk. Once again, the Spitfire loved all the glory, but the Kitty Hawk was a real workhorse. Lots of air-to-ground work, supporting troops. As Pete said, the airplane was optimised basically for lower level work. It's got a a fairly light wing loading, and it's got a fairly big thick wing, so it's a nice airplane down low, but struggles a bit with engine power and manoeuvrability up high. But that being said, Ted Sly and a number of other Bobby Gibbs all plied their trade around the Pacific region in this aeroplane, and they absolutely loved the aeroplane and were a little bit sad to give it up.
I was going to say it sounds a little bit like the Yak 18 that you fly, but then I'd be lying.
I think I know what I'd rather be sitting in, Pete, and it's not.
Again, the Lockheed Hudson now and the CAC Boomerang just taking off in front of you.
And of course, and he's really starting to enjoy displaying the P40.
Of course, many of the veterans flew these aircraft, and the museum has a program which we've mentioned before about.
I hope I don't bounce it now, you can hear that the beautiful rail engines just ticking
To the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation. We'll talk about the Boomerang when it splits off later, but I'll just bring the aircraft in.
The Allison engine chugging away there, Peter. Very rare piece of history there, Peter, just coming through from the south. Matt Denning, Pete, of course, very, very comfortable in the Boomerang.
He completely rebuilt this aeroplane with help from others, but over a period of 27 years, until recently was the only Boomerang flying in Australia. So the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation looked to what it had, and it had also very wisely, when it started production of the Wirral.
Well, Peter, it's quite fast for a bomber, isn't it?
Very fast, actually. It was designed out of an airliner produced by Lockheed, the Lockheed 14. The British Air Purchasing Commission went to they were attacked by the Japanese invasion fleet that was coming into Malaya. Now, this aircraft actually served with the RAAF's number 6 Squadron out of Milne Bay after the battle. But when the museum acquired the aeroplane, it had been now known as Forward Air Control. They were also equipped with the Boomerangs, and there are stories of these aircraft strafing Japanese troops from low level, picking targets. They were used to bring in the Corsair fighter bombers, the ones that operated with 5 Squadron, Corsairs of particularly, say, number 14 Squadron, Royal New Zealand Air Force, that were operating on Bougainville. This particular aircraft is painted in the mud. At that time, the Japanese had control of what is now known as New Guinea, and also operated from the Aru Islands and a couple of other archipelagos there, float plane fighters.
Guys, thanks very much for having me. Alan Arthur.
spotter as well, and doesn't get any better than this. I think, as I said yesterday, this is better than Disneyland. You get the aeroplanes, everyone's happy, and you get that smell of the AAF turd in the air. Perfect.
Almost turning in its own length.
Yeah, the turn radius is pretty small on the plane. That makes it one of the most capable air combat fighter pilots. Basically, wherever he looks, everything looks that way. He can instantly lock on and get missiles off within 1 second. Makes it a very formidable dogfighter.
Straight look shoot.
Exactly, looks can kill. And effectively an alpha repositioned roll at the end with a squat. You'll see again the incredible agility of the balloon at the end. Something more around it.
So the defence job's second to none.
A chance to fly.
As we said, we have the ramp talk. It's a unique opportunity down here at Temora where we bring the aircraft in, rope off this area. The pilots come out, you can talk to them. Please talk to the ground crew guys as well because they're the ones that really make all of this happen. The pilots in the aeroplanes and enjoy themselves.